My name is Юлией Вирко. I studied illustration at RISD, graduated in 2017, and then after a year went to Savannah College of Art and Design to do my master's degree. Katya's way of painting is a little different. It's much more precise. She has been preparing me for RISD. She is more of a traditional painter in the sense where she has the subject in front of her and she would paint it over a period of time to get all the details right. She would do these glazes over and over and over. They're very fine. The more she would layer it, the more it's kind of like this Polaroid image that all of a sudden just kind of comes together, and it's a very beautiful process to watch. Very delicate, and then I think the love of detail for her is so important. I think I wouldn't have been able to fall in love with making detailed work if it wasn't for her. Her father, Valery Leventhal, he has been doing set design in the Bolshoi Theater for many years, since he was young, and he had this ability of looking at something and remembering it so detailed. I think that's why so many people are drawn to his work, because it's not as simple as putting a cup and painting it, because the moment you put something in front of you, there's only one reality, and the one that you could see. But the moment you turn away and trying to remember this cup, then your brain does a little bit, it kind of acts in a different way. All of a sudden you're remembering just the essence of it. And when that translates into your work, it makes it much more humane, I guess. Because he had that aspect of creating his own reality based on what he saw. And that's the idea that I was trying to get into my work. Whether I was thinking about it or not, whether it was subconscious or not. I definitely was after that ability to be able to remember things and stripping away all the things that aren't important in the painting. Katya's Leventhal's son, who is Anthony Gelfand, is a mentor also, because even though he's older than me by 2 years, I always look at his work as something so important to me. I wouldn't say that I tried a lot of collages before I met Anthony. Also, there's an aspect of ink splatters that I'm doing for the show, and that's something that was present in his work quite a bit. I remember he was doing the works for a graduation at SCAD, and at this point I wasn't studying with him, but I saw it in the final kind of show, and there was such a great aspect of it where he used just black and white ink, but you could see atmospherical perspective in it, even though it was abstract. And that was something that I was baffled by. To me, it seemed it was done with such gesture and relatively quickly built up. And I wanted something like that present in my work. In some instances, there are more preparatory sketches than others. It all depends on, what I'm working on and how certain I am of a specific image. There are a couple of paintings that I had in mind, but I realized that I needed more preparation for those paintings to figure out composition and certain colorful elements that would be in it. But as I move forward with different paintings, some require less preparatory work, because some images they kind of come to you really fast, and for you not to waste time on sketches, you just kind of feel if you feel the need to be impulsive about it, you paint straight away, not to lose that sort of gesture-like idea at the beginning of the work, which is very important for it not to look static in any way. So if you start and if you are invested in several sketches beforehand, you're kind of losing that ability to become free at the start of the painting, and it's very important to keep that throughout your work, so it wouldn't become too still. I much prefer for the medium to do the work first, because I don't want to have too much control over it. So in terms of every painting that I started, it always had a specific undertone, the first layer of different color, like whether it would be pink, yellow, orange, red. And within that, I would start layering things on top of it. Maybe you would see something in the drips of how the paint dried, and you just kind of follow that in terms of, it's a very intuitive process, because you don't want to justify it too much, even for yourself, because otherwise it might become just boring for you. So you want to keep it moving, keep it fast, just less control. Sometimes less control is very helpful in terms of painting. And then you could be surprised by what you're making, because the less you think about it, the freer it becomes in some ways. And then again, art is, in terms of anything that you make, is always something recycled. It's a recycled idea constantly. The only way that you could make it your own is by combining elements in a different way. And it's harder to do sometimes when you have so many things. I mean, we're living at the age where you could see anything you want, research anything you want. Sometimes it becomes too much information, and you need to, it's a process of elimination in a way. Sometimes you need that time to figure out what it is you actually like, and it becomes much more intimate on that level, rather than, constantly looking at things around you. Sometimes it becomes confusing, and you need that sort of quiet time to yourself to have those answers for you. I'm not saying that you get them straight away, but the closer it becomes to like a finished work, the more you experiment, the more you realize what it's closer to you, why. And then, it's just, sometimes it's surprising to yourself, because you wouldn't know what you liked until you tried something. So you have to have that balance, you have to have a certain quiet time where your brain doesn't really tell you where you're wrong, or this color is wrong. Because when you're painting, this is the only time where your brain shuts off and you don't really have any thoughts, or, well, at least me, I'm not asking any sort of questions to myself while I paint. But the moment I stop painting and I take a seat, that's when it all comes back flowing in. This color is not right, this composition is wrong, or maybe this works. But the moment you start painting, it kind of becomes quieter. And you need that to be able to figure out what it is you truly want. But when the moment you stop, it all flows back in. So technically it's like meditation. It's the only time you don't really think of things. You only think the moment you stop painting. When you have the ability to paint, you realize that you can make your own reality. And when you realize that and you come to that conclusion, it becomes clear that reality as you see now is sometimes not enough for you. But if you have that ability to make your own reality, why not, right? And this is the most important question that pushes me to paint every day, or at least most of the time. The importance to make your own reality rather than be happy with where you are now. It's a mix of elements. It's a mix of childhood memories. It's a mix of things that you see even on your way to the studio. And in terms of how our brain functions, when we are having a certain dream or in a sort of dream state, our brain recycles that information and jumbles up it in a different way. So for us, dreams are always kind of interesting and intriguing, because our brain is using all these details that we see or haven't really remembered in years, mixing it all together for it to become something else, sort of recycled information. And I'm trying to apply the same idea to the work that I do. So bits and pieces combined, elements in the environments that I would see in a childhood or fascination that I have. And then adding other elements to it that I have seen or just randomly popped into my head. So trying to not really filter the information that I see or that I'm making, but using it in a way to sort of recycled idea, mix of things, ever-changing puzzle, because when we're working on a painting, whatever detail that you add, whatever color that comes to mind, and you put that sort of red detail somewhere in the painting, and then you realize that everything else has to be changed accordingly. So it always changes. Only you decide when you kind of abandon it and stop working on it, because it's important to not overwork it, so it would be kind of freeing to interpretation of the audience. In fact, I actually welcome a different interpretation of the audience, because I wouldn't want someone to have a clear idea of what it is. Just like if we're discussing, a dream that you had, nobody really is going to understand it unless they were there with you. Since that's impossible, you cannot really ask for it from the audience. And that's one of the reasons why the paintings don't have names, but they have numbers instead. So not to put any sort of pressure on the audience, so they can decide for themselves what they see and how it relates to them and their thinking. So I would rather keep it as vague as possible for the audience to be able to have their own interpretation of what it may be. There shouldn't be a specific order to it, because we never end up at the beginning of the story in the dream. We're always right in the middle of the event, right at this sort of thing where everything is happening. The way that our brain works, we don't really have an order. We don't see the beginning. We don't really see the end. And it's harder for us to remember when we're waking up and we're trying to recollect something. So it would be pointless to try and put something like that in order, because it doesn't really exist. We are in the middle. Every work that I'm making is technically a middle of that dream. Never really the beginning, never the end, just something that was the most important part, something that stays after you wake up, even though our brain is always processing information, always looking at things. So the moment you open your eyes, it becomes hazy, foggy, abstracted in a way, and it's harder and harder for us to remember. So for me to try and justify it and create an order of some sort, it would be almost unnatural to the work that I'm making. It's more of a intuition-based rather than logic-based, because the moment you turn to logic, then it kind of falls apart. Then it's not that dream state anymore. Then you're trying to apply something geometrical or mathematical to something that cannot be grasped and ephemeral. It wouldn't really make sense. In a world where everything has to be logical and you have to work and you have to be this or you have to be that, we're all trying to fit a certain mold. When you're a child, you can paint on walls with a marker. That's what everybody does, right? You like that idea of putting a hand in paint because the color is nice and you want to touch it. I wanted to keep a certain aspect of that naivety or childhood, not philosophy, but just, as children, that's the only time we're actually free in terms of what we think, what we do, how we imagine the world when we grow up. I just figured for me it was a very important aspect to keep having always. It's a ritual. I want to touch the paint and I want to smell it. I'm not going to eat it, but I want to have that ability to sometimes think that, as a kid, I'm allowed to do this and I'm allowed to splash the paint if I want to. I'm allowed to scratch it if I want to. I'm allowed to do whatever I can with the work that I'm making. Again, not to be in a certain mold, to have the ability to sometimes, do whatever intuition tells you to do, however you feel like doing it, That's important. That's freedom in a way. So you could keep a little aspect of that idea and then hopefully grow with it and constantly keep it with you at all times.